Yesterday we had an earthquake. It's the first one I have ever been in, and it was only a little one, 2.2 on the Richter scale. I don't know if you've ever been in an earthquake, but it's quite cool. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to those who have been in serious earthquakes, but little ones, it's like an upside down thunderstorm. It's really weird. The sound comes up from the ground rather than coming down from above, the rumble. Sam and I actually looked at each other thinking it was thunder when it started, and it sort of became apparent rather quickly that it wasn't. Anyway, what's that got to do with networks and Wi-Fi? Well, this is a reinforced concrete pillar. This is a reinforced concrete floor. So the whole floor is concrete with metal rebar through it. And of course, up here, this is all reinforced concrete. The ceiling is reinforced concrete. Reinforced concrete is really bad for Wi-Fi signals. So we started off, like many people originally, with just a regular modem router type thing. Very quickly I upgraded to a mesh type system, a wireless mesh type system, which works reasonably well, but we've got 2 mesh nodes upstairs, I've got 1 downstairs, I've got 1 outside in the pool room, the apotheke boiler room, and 1 in the workshop. They say you don't want to have too many nodes. And with the ones we've got, communication between them can sometimes be a bit iffy because of all this concrete. So what I want to do, I want to put in a wired Ethernet backhaul. And we're very fortunate in Corfu and Greek style of wiring, and quite possibly European, but it's not done like this in the UK. So I'll show you why we're very fortunate. So here is, this is a Cat 5e. Yes, it should be Cat 6e, but this was really cheap, and we are not uploading, downloading crazy amounts of stuff. For a family of 4, we've got a few iPads and tellies and stuff, so for Cat 5e is plenty fast enough. So here's the cable. I need to get this. It's going to plug in here to my Wi-Fi mesh node, and then as you can see, it goes down into the wall. I don't know if you can see. I was trying to do this. There you go. So it goes down into the wall. Now, why are we fortunate here? Let me show you. This way. Come here. Reinforced concrete. No good for signals. Reinforced concrete. No good for signals. Reinforced concrete stairs. How does my Wi-Fi work? It doesn't really very well. Into the laundry cupboard. Here's another little one of these mesh nodes, currently in wireless mode. Now, why are we so lucky? Right, when they build these houses, because they're built of reinforced concrete, they run cable conduits into all the walls. So in the UK, you would generally have to chase in cabling. When you're going to put Ethernet cables into your house, it's a big job. Here, they've already got... Okay, so that bit's not finished very well, is it, the Greeks? But conduits and conduits, because this is a laundry cupboard, the conduits are surface mounted. Now, normally they would obviously be buried in the wall, but the great thing is, this wire here, in this conduit, is the one from the living room, the one I just showed you. So yesterday I ran that through the conduit. I had to cut no holes, I had to chase nothing. It was literally put a snake up there, fish tape, and pull it through. Great, so we've got 2 more here for the downstairs. What I'm doing, I'm replacing, these are all TV cables. These are all TV cables. So we no longer use, they're actually satellite, we no longer use satellite TV. The dish is gone, we use smart TV like, everybody else these days. So these are redundant, these cables are redundant, which is fantastic because they've already got all the conduits. I don't know if you can see up there. The run. So the 2 coiled cables there are for the spare bedroom and the toy room, which are going to be the other 2 which will have a network point. So upstairs we're going to have network in the wired Ethernet network in the living room, spare bedroom and the toy room. That's all we need. So this cable goes up to to the living room. This cable here, which I ran yesterday, this one goes out to the apotheke, and then that will daisy chain off up to the workshop. So we'll have a wired backbone and everything. What we're going to have in this box, again, already there because they were using it as a junction box for the TV cables, we're going to have an 8-port network switch. And I'll show you how to set that up because it's really, really, really easy. The mesh system we're using is a TP Link system. Because I've got TP Link switch, it all talks to each other with 0 setup. The only thing that's really awkward is this. That is my only power socket in here, and obviously I want power down here. So we're going to have to, I'm not going to chase in like they've done here. I'm going to surface mount a conduit and run some AC there. So we'll do that, show you that, and then we'll put in the switch, terminate the plugs, the wires, and turn it on and see what happens. Okay, so for the power, we've done a little bit of a cheeky. Again, for my UK friends, Part P, don't think this will be compliant, but it comes down to using the trunking again, and it's a great little hack, and it's one that I learnt from the air conditioning guys. It's the way the aircon guys pick up power when they're installing a new AC. So, right, here's the trick. There's a socket, and above that socket, running up, there will be a conduit in the wall with the power. So what you do is you cut a little hole in the render. It's not plaster. Remember, we're concrete construction here, so it's a bit different. Concrete and then a render on top. I don't know if you can see in there. You probably can't. But what I've done, maybe there, look. What I've done is chiseled into the wall, found that conduit, and then basically, again with a cold chisel, just smashed into the side of the conduit. Pull the cables out, disconnect from the socket, pull the cables out. It's this one and this one and this one here. And then put your old chocolate block on there. We're going to have this surface mount conduit, it's going to go on here. Like it. And we will pick up from the chocolate block for our supply that way. So that's the only bit of kind of chiselling and bashing into walls we'll have to do. The rest will all be surface mount. Dead easy. Nice. Well, I'd love to show you how it's working so far. It is working rather well, except we've got a power cut, which is not unusual over the winter in Corfu, so no internet. I'll show you what I've done so far though. Right, so down here on the box, here is the 8-port switch. The top cable here is the one that runs up to the main mesh node upstairs. This yellow plug goes up to this mesh unit here. So that's on a wired backhaul. This one here runs down, it goes into the apotheke, which is Greek for shed, boiler room. Where it connects into the back of another one of these units. You can daisy chain these as an in and an out port. And that then daisy chains off to the workshop. In the workshop I've got another switch, it's a 5-port switch. So the laptop in the workshop is on a wired Ethernet connection. The CCTV cameras aren't because they are only Wi-Fi. So they can only be Wi-Fi. So there we go, there's the power points I put in yesterday. English plugs, because this kit all came from the UK, just a bit of conduit, and there was that thing on the wall there. So when the power comes back on, it'll work. So we've still got these two do the downstairs bedroom TV points, which will obviously now be Ethernet ports, network sockets, and then those two cables up there are the 2 rooms we've yet to do upstairs. But there's no rush for those at the moment because of the 5 mesh units. Only one of them currently isn't wired with an Ethernet backhaul, which is the one in the spare bedroom upstairs, which I'll do at some point, but it actually works quite well, that one. It's close enough to the main one. What I will do, if I can, I might just draw out the topography, because one of the things that I found wasn't obvious was using these mesh units with an Ethernet switch. I have modem, which goes into the hub mesh unit, if you like. That then has an Ethernet down to this switch. Then from that switch we go to another mesh, which is fine. You can do that. Everyone says you can do that. But then we go from this switch down to the one in the apotheke, and then I've daisy chained back off that one. So can you have a switch, then a mesh, and then another mesh? Apparently you can. It works. So that's good. Why doesn't the internet tell you that? The internet should tell you everything. Come on, Google. So what really is the purpose of this video of me installing the Ethernet cables around my house for the mesh system? I don't know really. I felt like just recording me doing it. But hopefully I've got some answers to some questions that I had that weren't answered, I couldn't find just with the usual internet searches. So the first one is one that I can't answer really. Access points or mesh, particularly once you have wired your mesh in with an Ethernet cable. One of the great selling points for mesh systems out of the box is the fact that you don't need an Ethernet cable, you don't need any wires, the whole thing just works wirelessly, which it kind of did, but there's a couple of issues. One, for me personally, the house, as I alluded to, is a reinforced concrete structure. It's built that way because it's earthquake proof. The earthquake we had the other day, that's the whole point, but that makes it pretty terrible for propagating wireless signals. Also, my workshop, here it is, it's steel. So I have built myself a giant Faraday cage, which means that getting Wi-Fi in and out of here doesn't work very well. Now I knew that, so there was always going to be an Ethernet cable between the house, the main mesh hub, and the one in the workshop. The one in the workshop, excuse the fact, it's just kind of wedged in. I haven't finished building the workshop, all right, look. There's cabling everywhere, it's really, it's not finished, but it's operational. That one was always going to be wired. Particularly when I discovered that, well, I kind of knew, but the construction of the house has those lovely conduits in it, so actually running cables is really easy. If you're doing this in a sort of conventionally built house in the UK, you're looking at mainly stud walls with plasterboard. Okay, there's going to be the odd structural wall, load-bearing wall, which will be brick. But that makes it really complicated because you're having to cut plasterboard, you're having to fish in the cavities. You're probably going to have to chase things in. It's a big job. Here it was really easy, you just pull the wires through. So I have a wired mesh system. Now I'm still not entirely sure on the difference between a wired AP and a wired mesh. I don't really care, I've got mesh and it's now wired. The real question that I had was to do with using switches. There's the little switch in the workshop. Because the system I have is TP Link, and they do have some diagrams for using switches, but not in the way that I have used it. So, holding a pen because I've done a drawing. Probably should do this electronically, shouldn't I? But I'm too much of a Neanderthal. So this is what we've got. So it's a lighting situation. We have the internet represented by a cloud. Then we have the modem. This is the conventional modem router that you will have for anyone. I'm only using the modem part of that, but don't worry about that, it will sort itself out. Then I've got the main mesh node. With a mesh system you always have a main one which has to be wired to your modem. Okay, that is the only wire you need for a mesh system. Everything else can be connected wirelessly. So I do have a mesh node in our spare bedroom which is still wireless. Cool. Then we go down to a network switch. TP Link show you having the main node going to a switch and then daisy chaining off, not daisy chaining, then linking onto another mesh node. So that's cool. I knew that would work. And in the same way, it's a switch, 8 ports, comes down to the next one. What I didn't know was what would happen now downstream of here. Because I've gone through a switch, can I continue to daisy chain this down to the next one? Which is exactly the way I have my system. So this is the living room, that's the spare bedroom, this one is the linen closet, that one's the apotheke, that one is the workshop. And then we have another switch downstream of there. But it was particularly this bit of after a switch, can I have daisy chained? The answer is yes, you can. And what's really interesting is when you look at so that's how it's physically wired. When you look at the way the system sees itself, I've now got the main node here, the main deco, and then we've got the boiler house, the apotheke, workshop, bedroom, linen cupboard. Now, in terms of cabling, this one is linked to this one, which is linked to this one. They don't show that. And in fact, this one is linked wirelessly to this one and through a switch to this one. It just shows everything wired together. So it can't see, it might be able to see, but it doesn't care that there's a switch here and the workshop and boiler house are linked downstream of that switch. The linen cupboard I wouldn't expect it to worry about because they say it won't. Now, what's actually quite interesting is before I used the Ethernet cables to link things together, that map looked different, and actually it had the main deco here, then it went off to the boiler house, and the workshop was shown below the boiler house, connected via an Ethernet cable. So it was suggesting the information was coming from the workshop through the boiler house, then wirelessly linked here. That's obviously no longer the case because we've got the Ethernet backhaul. It just sees them all connected. So if you have that question, particularly with TP Link and particularly with TP Link Decos, I've got 3M5s and 3M9s. Yes, they will work. It would appear in any sort of configuration of how you have the switches and how you have your decos before or after or daisy chained after. As long as you have that initial, this one's important, you've got to have this Ethernet cable here. Once you've got that, everything else it appears you can do with as you see fit. Cool. Would I have been better using APs? There are differences, there are pros and cons to the both, and I'm not going to pretend to understand them because I am not a techie person. One of the nice things about mesh is that you don't need to be a techie person. I was looking into this before I bought it, obviously. Mesh kind of sorts itself out. With the wired APs, you have to do things like muck around with SSIDs, and you have to muck around with IP addresses, albeit once off, you just have to set things up. But DHCP, yeah, what's that? MAC address, subnet mask. I kind of know what they are a bit, but not really enough to manage a multi-port network. So mesh 1 in that respect. And now we've got the Ethernet backhaul. Allegedly, it's 7 times faster than having a wireless backhaul. So, yeah, great, easy to install, reliable, happy.